Justice is incumbent on everyone, with everyone, in all circumstances. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Allah gave every human being the right to accept the truth or to reject it. This is what prophets come and tell people. But the choice is yours. If you take this straight path, you go to Allah, you go to paradise.
I welcome you all to this morning's lecture by Dr. JafarIdris. This lecture is on the topic Justice to Humanity. What is the real justice which has to be given to the humanity, and where does it come from? Does it come from human beings or from the Creator Himself? Who is to judge what is right for the human beings and the other living things in this world? Now, without wasting much of your time, I'd straight away ask Dr. JafarIdris to deliver a speech on the topic Justice to Humanity.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. The simple definition of justice is to treat equal things equally and different things different. This is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in the fitrah, in the original nature of every human being. Even children know this. If two children give the same answer to a question and you praise one of them and you don't praise the other, he will object. Why? Because he knows that if he is like the other, he has to be treated like him, and to treat different things differently. Also, to give everyone, whether he's human or even animal, to give everyone his or its right. It's a simple definition of justice. In Islam, the greatest right is that of Allah. This is the basis and the origin of all rights. What is Allah's right? The Prophet ﷺ answered the question. He said, مَا حَقُّ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْعَبِيدِ. He said that to be worshipped, أَنْ يَعْبُدُوهُ لَا يُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا, that they worship Him and don't associate anyone with Him. Why is this His right? Because He is the Creator. People contradict themselves. Many of them believe that God is the Creator, the only Creator. This means that He is the only provider. Now, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only Creator, if it is He only who can benefit or harm you, then it is to Him that one should turn and not turn to someone else. So this is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is, as I said, the origin, the basis, the foundation of all rights. Why? Because if Allah is the Creator, then it is He who says, this one of my creation has this right, this one has this right. It is He who gives rights. But now we live in a world in which secularism has become very prevalent. And therefore, when people talk of human rights, they don't know and they can't justify this. Why do you believe that people have these rights? I asked many Western intellectuals about this. I said, who said that humans have this right or that right? One lady said, because all people are agreed on this. I said, no, it is not true. The Declaration of Human, there are many people who object to some items in what is called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. For example, we as Muslims don't believe that a Muslim has the right to leave his religion and become kafir. But in the declaration, he has this right. The women, according to the declaration, have the right to marry whom they want to. In Islam, no. There are restrictions and so on. So not all people are agreed on everything that is in what is called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is something that was written by a Western lawyer, I think he was French, and the United Nations, just by majority, adopted it. When you ask them, what is the basis of this? Why do you say that humans have this or that right? The natural answer would have been that Allah gave them this right. But because of the prevalence of secularism, they don't want to say that. Now, some people used to say that this is natural right. Well, to some extent that is true. But then also people differ about what is natural, what is not natural. And because they undermine the ground on which human rights are based, now rights became something whimsical. Everyone says that this is right, that's right. And the most important right now became freedom of sex in the West. The freedom to marry whom you want, to have sex with whom you want, whether male or female, young or old, irrespective of the religion, whether they are married or not married. In Islam, we base all the rights on that foundational right, the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be worshipped. Allah gave every human being the right to accept the truth or to reject it. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. This is the truth. This is the way that leads you to paradise. This is what prophets come and tell people. If you take this straight path, you go to Allah, you go to paradise. You live a happy life in this world. But the choice is yours. You can take the other road and go to hellfire and lead a wretched life in this world. No one can force you. Many Muslims now, when they want to state this fact, they have nothing to quote except the famous verse, La ikraha fi din. There is no compulsion in religion. But this fact is expressed in so many verses in the Quran. In fact, it is in the nature of the religion itself. What is the religion? It is faith in Allah. And faith is something in the heart, and nothing can enter the heart without the will of the person. You can threaten me and frighten me and make me surrender externally. I will do this. If you point a gun to me and say surrender, I will do. If you say, want me to say I'm not a Muslim, I will say I am not a Muslim. Whatever you want me to say, I will say. But this is only something external, verbal. You cannot force me to change my heart. And it is because of this that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells prophets that your job is only to explain the truth to people. You don't have the power to instill guidance in people's heart. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah tells His Prophet, you don't guide whom you love to guide. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides. And He guides those whom He knows that they desire to be guided. They are looking for the truth. So Allah looks into people's hearts and gives guidance only to those whom He knows are seeking the truth. If someone is not seeking the truth, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not guide him. This, as I said, is expressed in so many verses in the Quran. Noah said to his people, أَنُلْزِمُكُمُوهَا وَأَنْتُمْ لَهَا كَارِهُونَ. Can I force it on you while you hate it? It means no. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells His Prophet, إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرٌ لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُسَيْطِرٍ. You are only a reminder. You have no power over them. And some ulama said that this famous verse
La ikraha fi din, it is in fact stating a fact. It is not an order. It says, La ikraha fi din. There can be no compulsion in religion. And therefore, don't try the impossible. So when people say that Islam is spread by the sword, they don't know what they are talking about. Because the sword doesn't put its faith in people's hearts. Yes, you can defend the faith when people attack it, especially physically. Yes, you can defend the faith by the sword. And you can defend the believers by the sword. But you cannot make da'wah. You cannot invite people to be Muslims by frightening them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave also rights and orders us to treat our parents justly. You see, the rights of parents come immediately after the right of the Creator. Allah created us. Our parents gave birth to us. So the rights of parents come immediately after the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why we are ordered, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, and treat your parents nicely, in a good way. And we are ordered to obey them. But our obedience to them and to anyone else, anyone other than Allah, is conditional. We obey them so long as they don't tell us to do something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us not to do. And we are told to be nice to them even if they don't accept Islam, even if they are kafirs. وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. And they have a right which I see is violated in the West now, especially in the United States. What is this right? Parents have the right that their natural children be attributed to them, whatever they do. Even if you kill your child, it is still your child. So that's why Islam forbade adoption. Because when you say you adopt a child, you say this is my child, you are not telling the truth. That's what the Quran said. He said, ذَلِكُمْ قَوْلُكُمْ بِأَفْوَاهِكُمْ. This is what you say with your tongues. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states the truth. The truth is that this child is not your child. So don't name him or her after you. But in the United States now, if you do something to your child, he can be taken from you and given to someone else, and that those people become the parents of the child. And sometimes this can be unfair. Treatment of parents can be for the wrong reason. There's a very sad story of a Muslim, I think he was from Bosnia or so. He was seen kissing his daughter. She must have been about 5 years old or so, kissing. Then someone told the police that there is someone here who is, what do they say? And anyway, both their children were taken from them and given to a Catholic family. Muslims collected money for them, and about $300, and the higher court said that the decision of the lower court was wrong, because this is the tradition. They didn't mean to molest the child or so. But decisions of, I think they say parenthood or something, of adoption cannot be changed. If the court decides that someone is your child, then he is your child. There is nothing you can do. I said, this is very strange. I mean, the court has the right to say that my natural child is not my child, but doesn't have the right to say my adopted child is not my child. This is very, very strange. And in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنْ أُمَّهَاتُهُمْ إِلَّا اللَّائِ وَلَدْنَا. Your mothers are only those who gave birth to you. You see, this is a natural fact. And the Quran always speaks about the truth. So these are some of the rights of parents. Now, there are rights also to non-Muslims. And non-Muslims are of two kinds. Some of them are kafirs and enemies of Islam. They knew the truth, they rejected it, and some of them became even enemies of Islam, working against Muslims. Even these have right. We read in the Quran, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ أَنْ صَدُّوكُمْ عَنِ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ أَنْ تَعْتَدُوا وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Let not your hatred of a people who prevented you from visiting the Holy Mosque. This is when the Prophet ﷺ and his companions came to make Umrah, and the Kafirs in Mecca prevented them from doing this. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Muslims, don't let this make you unjust. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ أَنْ صَدُّكُمْ عَنِ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ أَنْ تَعْتَدُوا. Don't transgress. You have to be just. In the same surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Be just. That is nearer to the truth. And Ibn al-Qayyim, commenting on this verse, he said something that I liked very much. He said something which means that justice in Islam is absolute. العدل واجب على كل أحد مع كل أحد في كل أحد. Justice is incumbent on everyone, with everyone, in all circumstances. So don't say, I become just when it comes to Muslims, but I have the right not to treat non-Muslims unjustly. No. Justice is absolute. There's a story in the Quran I wish that many of the non-Muslims know about. Some people, according to some commentators, one of them was a munafiq, he was a hypocrite. He stole something from someone, and then the Muslims wanted to defend him. He put the thing which he stole in the house of a Jew. And then these Muslims came to the Prophet ﷺ and bore witness that it was the Jew who stole the thing. And the Prophet ﷺ almost believed them. Do you know what happened? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed 12 verses in Surah An-Nisa about this incident. وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ لِتَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِمَا أَرَاكَ اللَّهُ. We have sent down the book to you so that you judge between people according to what Allah shows you. So be not an advocate for the traitors. And the traitor here is someone who was pretending to be a Muslim or who was a Muslim, we don't know. And pray forgiveness of God, surely. And do not dispute on behalf of those who betray themselves. وَلَا تَكُنْ لِلْخَائِنِينَ خَصِيمًا. And then the verses go on and say that this person did something, he committed a sin, but then he cast it on an innocent person, meaning the Jew, an innocent person, and that they think that they can hide from people, but they cannot hide from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on and so on. 12 verses in the Quran to prove the innocence of the Jew. This is something very important in the present circumstances in which we live. It is important that when a Muslim commits a sin or a crime or treats some people unfairly, we should say that this is unfair, this is wrong, this is sinful. We defend the truth. We don't defend people, we defend the truth. When some Muslims killed some kafirs during the Haram months, and this was something in the eyes of the Arabs, this was a dreadful sin, that you fight people in the holy months. Now, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يسألونك عن الشهر الحرام قتال فيه قل قتال فيه كبير. They ask you about fighting in the holy months. Say that this is a grave sin. And that sin was committed by Muslims. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala went on to tell the kafirs that what they are doing
is in fact greater sin than what the Muslims did. We can say, if indeed it was the Muslim who did this is wrong. But then we also must tell the Kafirs that the thing to which he responded in this wrong way, we have to stand for justice. Even when a Muslim does something which is unfair, we should declare, we should say this clearly, that this is unfair. We don't agree with him, because it is our duty to defend the truth and not to defend just human beings. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله العظيم.
Jazakumullahu khair. Inshallah, we'll continue this with question and answer sessions. If anybody is there from other faith, please come forward and feel free to ask question and answers.
I'm Dr. Sharma.
Yes.
I have quite a few basic questions about Islam. I have a great respect for the religion, there is no doubt. I appreciate the brotherhood they preach, and whole verses of Quran are excellent, there is no doubt about it. I have a great respect and regard for it, but there is one fundamental question from Quran itself. Quran starts with Alif, Lam, Mim. Can you explain these three words to me?
According to some commentators of the Quran, Allah is telling us that the Quran is composed of these letters that you know, but you cannot produce a book like the Quran. And this shows that the Quran is something miraculous. This is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they have realized that in almost all the surahs of the Quran that they start with these letters, there is something about the Quran. Alif Lam Mim, ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه. ألف لام ميم نزل عليك الكتاب بالحق. طه ما أنزلنا عليك القرآن and so on. So this is one of the explanations.
Anyone else, brothers?
I have not read the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible or the Quran. But as far as what I heard from Muslim friends, that it is the duty of the parents to tell the child about Allah. Now, a son was born to me. When he was born, I thought of Allah. He was born deaf, dumb and blind. Now, how can I teach him about Allah? He is born deaf, dumb and blind. That's it.
Okay. Perhaps you heard the story of the lady, what was her name? Who are dumb, deaf and blind. And she was taught. But anyway, if you can't teach him or her, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you only to do that which you can. If you can't teach her, then Allah will not blame you for this. But the concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the human mind. Even if she is deaf and blind, still she knows that she has a creator. She doesn't know the name, call him Allah or so, but she knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this knowledge in his or her heart. So if you can't develop that knowledge, if you can't teach her, then it is not your mistake. But I as I understand, there are ways now of teaching deaf, dumb and blind people. Perhaps using the sense of touch.
Jazakallah khair. Subhanakallahumma bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.